Hi, welcome to the next challenge. This one's called Reversed Words. The instructions are to complete the solution so that it reverses all of the words within the string passed in. So they have an example here. We have the text, "The greatest victory is that which requires no battle." And after processing, after this reversal, you can see it reads backwards. Battle, no, requires, which that is victory, greatest, the. So I think that makes it pretty clear what they're looking for here. So if you do have a little C++ experience, go ahead and have an attempt. If you're brand new and still have no idea where to even start, maybe you don't. Maybe you just watch me solve the problem. You determine what's best and then pause if you need to. Otherwise, let's get into it. We'll remove this little return string bit that we don't need. We certainly have to return. We didn't talk a lot about methods in the first video. So just know that when you have something like this, it's called a method. This is the name of the method, and it specifies a return type. If that doesn't say void, you're obligated to return that type. So in this case, they had us just returning the input, which is a string, is fine. It'll take any string you give it back. So just a little more insight. Like I said, we can't talk about everything in every video, but we'll branch out a little bit in each video, and that way none of them are terribly long. So this is just kind of a placeholder. We'll get rid of that. So how do we do this? I'm going to use something called a string stream to process the words in the original input stream. So you can imagine, and look at the test examples if you like here. You'll see it's a bunch of strings, which is a string is a type that holds text. And in this case, we have a bunch of words that are separated by spaces. That's sort of what defines what constitutes a word, is a space. So we have hello world in the first one, and we're expecting to get back world. And notice the exclamation mark is included. It's a character. So we're including that world hello. We're going to take whatever characters are in here. If they're numbers, if they're punctuation, we're going to preserve that. So, like I said, we're going to use this istringstream to process the words. Feel free to consult the document page on that if you'd like more information. We talked about how these are kind of intimidating to look at first, so what I recommend when you're first using it, just go right down to the example section, and it gives you a concrete way to look at the functionality. So you can see we create one of these things here, this string stream, and you sort of initialize it with a string. And that's handy because we're dealing with a string. We have an input like this as well, coming in string form. And by passing it to this istringstream, it converts it into something else that we'll call a string stream. Just imagine a stream of text. So in this case, it's just a string variable, but imagine a file on your computer system that has a bunch of text contained within it. That's a common place to have string streams. So anyway, once you have that, look at this operator here. And you can think of it as just like pulling out one word at a time. So they set up a for loop here to make 5 loops, and each time pull one of the words out. In this case, it's numbers, to be 125, 320, 512. It's grabbing all 5 of those. So we're going to use the same kind of approach to get each of these words out, and then as I get them, I'm going to sort of construct a new string that I'll return as the result. And each time as I get a new word, I'm going to keep prepending it to the front of my string to get that effect where the words are reversed. So to start, let's make that istringstream object to process the words. So for this, we'll go auto, I'll call it ISS for short, istringstream. And that's going to be equal to istringstream. and we initialize it with our input, this str, the input parameter, which is a string, just like in the example we looked at on the document page. And then this is new, right? I just use the auto keyword. It's kind of a handy shorthand that you can use when declaring variables that specifies, it lets the compiler infer the type, so it knows that it's a istringstream type from this statement. You know, it's important when you use this to name your variables well. Maybe ISS isn't that descriptive, but you can imagine if I had a bunch of these auto variables and I didn't name them well, then you're sort of left wondering, well, what is this thing that I'm dealing with? What's the type of this variable? So just keep that in mind if you use the auto. But it's just like writing out the type, you know, something like that. Nice shorthand when you get complicated type names. So we have that. We have our istringstream. Now I'm going to make a local string variable called word that I'm going to store each of the words in that we peel off from the string stream. Remember that in the example we were doing that? We had they were throwing it in this val. They had an integer in their case because they were working with numbers, but something to store each word that we grab. In our case, we're dealing with strings, so mine's going to be a string. And I'll just set it to an empty value right now. So then finally, I'm going to make another string that's going to have the result. These are going to be the reversed words, and that'll start out empty as well. And if you are curious, there's a little shorthand you can do when you have variables, multiple variables of the same type. You can just use comma, list another name and its value, and then just end with the usual semicolon. It's a little shorthand if you prefer that. Save some space. So now I can say while the string stream, while we can grab words out of it, you can sort of think of this as saying, while there are words to grab from the string stream, we're going to do something, right? So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to have this reversed, and I'm going to, like I mentioned, insert the word at the beginning. This is the basic idea, right? This 0 is just telling you the index where in this string to insert the extra content. So when I say 0, that means at the beginning. You can think of each character in the word. The first character would have index 0, the second letter or character would have index 1, etc. When I say 0, it'll put my whatever's in this word variable at the very beginning before everything else in reversed. So you can imagine in the hello world example, first I'm going to get hello, then the string stream is going to feed me the world with the exclamation mark, and I'm saying insert that in front of hello. So it's going to end up with this result, world space hello. But I do have to deal with this space thing, right? If I don't do that, they're all going to be mashed together. So to handle this, I'm going to say if not reversed empty. That means that there's already content present in empty. This won't be true the first time, right? But if there's already a word there, we're going to say you need to insert a space before adding the next word. Insert 0 and just a space. So the first time we don't need to prepend a space. That would be bad, right? It would, then our answer would be space world space hello. So I only do it if reversed is not empty. The first time, remember we set it up to be empty string. So the first time through, this won't fire, but in subsequent runs through the while loop, it will. And while loop is like for loops, but it continues indefinitely until its condition is met. In this case, ISS will run out of words once it hits the end of the stream. So that should about do it, but remember the important point I said, we've got to honor the contract. Methods have contracts that says, hey buddy, you got to return a string. So provided we did everything right, I can simply return this reversed, which I defined as a string. So now I think we're fully covered. I'll go ahead and run this first with the test. Okay, so we have a problem, right? This is good. A little practice on looking at problems. Whenever these problems come up, again, it's an opportunity to try it on your own. You can pause the video and see if you can figure it out. Otherwise, we'll just go into it. So, use of undeclared identifier istringstream. It's basically, to me, looks like saying, I don't know what this istringstream thing is. And that makes sense, right? Because we didn't make it. We didn't write the code for it. So let's go back to the documentation and see what we need to use it. If you look at your example, they were kind enough to tell us we need to include this stream library because they put a comment that say, hey, you need this for istringstream. So let's go ahead and grab that. We'll add that. And let's try again. See if that fixes the problem. No. Use of undeclared. Another tip too, see how it says 5 and then position 16? That means line 5. And then if you count out 16 characters, that'll show you where the problem starts. It's probably right here with istringstream. And then type. Oh, and they're dinging us for string too. Did you mean? Okay, so I'm going to bring in the standard namespace. See how they're even mad at me for using string just like this instead of the very explicit standard string. So you could either write out standard string like that, or what is more common, I'll say using namespace std stud. So we have that. That should make this requirement go away. Let's try again. There we go. Now it's all happy. So, yeah, that should do it. There are certainly other ways to go about solving this problem, and that's great. If you did it another way, maybe you made a vector of strings and then you called there's a reverse function where you can reverse the order of the elements in a vector, and then so maybe you built it in the right order, you called reverse, and then you converted that vector back into a simple string and returned that result. You know, that works too. Typically when you look at lots of different solutions, eventually you'll analyze them to see which one performs the best based on your idea of what kind of input you'll be receiving. Because different solutions could work better depending on the type of input you have, you know. It's not always one solution fits every scenario. So I think that's good enough for this video. As usual, I encourage people to ask questions and comments because I don't know which parts are weird or you're stuck on. So feel free to hit me up in the comments section if you'd like. Otherwise, we'll move on to another challenge. Thanks for watching.